Alright, gamer fans, this is JRS Beta Tests, aka JR Sommerfeld, and I am here with a visual novel, Venus, the Improbable Dream. Now, this is an age-appropriate title, to my knowledge, and so I'm not exactly sure what to expect with this particular one, but I believe it's just a story about two people who are musical. Maybe. We'll find out. Let's go ahead and start, shall we? Oh. Case study hemangioма? Hemangioma. That's what my parents told me it was called. A growth of extra blood vessels clumped together to form a tumor. No one knows why it happens. Some people are just unlucky, I guess. And mine started to appear a few weeks after I was born. A slight discoloration of skin, barely noticeable at first, that slowly began to take over my face little by little. And they started off flat and grew bigger and bigger with time, and after a point, they reached their limit and began to shrink, eventually disappearing altogether. And most children who have hemangiomas lose them by the time they are 10. I didn't. Around the time I started junior high, the doctor started giving me all sorts of medication in order to get it to recede, but there were limited results. And the main swollen bulge of tumor shrank, and for the most part, but other than that, nothing changed. I'm still left with a huge dark red patch of rough, rubbery skin on my face, and I hate it. Surgery was discussed at one point, but considering how close it was to my eye, this thing is, well, it would be risky. And my parents decided against it. They said that I didn't need it, that I could still live a perfectly happy life the way things were, and that was that. Hemangioma, I have to get that word right, hemangioma and tumors sound like scary words, but in fact, hemangiomas are almost always harmless, so they're not scary at all. Well, not to everyone else. They still are to me. Not because of what mine can do to me, but what it does to other people. I can't even begin to recall the amount of times a stranger has gawked at me on the street or shuddered in repulsion at the sight of my face. And the worst part is, I don't blame him. After a while, I began to feel like I deserved every mean comment, every snarky remark, every playtime left alone while everyone else had fun together. They're right. I'm ugly. Every time I see it, touch it, or remember that it's there, I just want to die. And my parents used to tell me that I didn't matter what I looked like, that the people who were rude about it were the problem, not me. They'd always insist that I'd grow up just the same as everyone else. But how can I hold a conversation with somebody with them staring at that monstrosity on my face? And I figured out pretty quickly that there was no point in trying to be normal. Someone like me could never fit in with any group of friends. They'd only keep me around so that I could be the butt of everyone's joke. And I started doing everything I could not to be noticed. I put the absolute minimum effort into everything. I taught myself to be invisible. And yes, I felt lonely and isolated, but it was better than being picked on. And that's just the way I have to live my life now. And I might be 17. And almost ready to face the real world. But as long as I have this hemangioma, I'll never be able to face anything. Not even my own face. Chapter 1. Curiosity. Just another day, and the other students around me are sharing whispered chatter as usual. I sit right back in the back of the room so I can see everybody else in the class. More importantly, they can't see me. And it's one of my safety barriers. You tend to make a lot of them when you have a problem like I do. Glancing back at my workbook, I let my eyes comb over the questions again, and I've answered them all. But the incessant scratching of pens on paper tells me that everyone else is still working. It usually plays out that way. I've never exactly been smart, but with nobody to talk to, I just put my head into my schoolwork. Thanks to this, I've never had any issues with low grades. The last thing I want to be called out is for not putting enough effort in. And wouldn't really help with the whole not being noticed thing. And with nothing else to do, I let my gaze move to the view of the windows to my left. It's early June, so the rainy season's probably going to hit us soon. And the sky isn't exactly cheerful, turning more and more gray by the day, but at least it's warm. Now, don't forget to read through pages 198 through 204 before the next class. Matsumoto Sensei's voice was so loud in comparison to the hush of the room, I almost flinch. His instruction must mean that the bell is about to ring for lunch. Looking up at the clock on the wall, it confirms it. And quietly, I start to pack my things away. My classmates aren't in the same hurry, as they tend to linger for a while, gossiping and doing whatever it is that friends do before heading to the cafeteria. You wouldn't catch me doing either of these things. I have my own little ritual that I do every day. After finding a secluded spot not long after I first come to school, I've always eaten there alone, away from prying eyes. It's more comfortable that way. Thinking about it makes me even more anxious to get there and enjoy at least an hour of peace before I have to come back to another full room of people.
Remember, it's Wednesday, so you've got your science quiz coming up after lunch.
So the classroom erupts in a collective groan, and I think I'm the only person who doesn't object. Hoisting my bag on my shoulder, and I lean forward in my seat, and I find myself staring at the clock, watching the second hand tick by, waiting for the first acceptable moment to leave the room. And the wait feels impossibly drawn out, but eventually the hands synchronize and on the hour. And the bell rings out shrilly in the corridor, acting like the starting gun of a race, and I stand up from my seat before anybody else does, turning towards the door and grateful to escape the discomfort of the crowded room. However, just as I'm taking my first step, another sound echoes across the classroom, coming from the opposite direction.
A cane!
My entire body froze in place. The teacher never calls on me. And I'm the remarkable kid who gets decent grades and never says a word. What does he want with me? So I struggle to twist my rigid limbs back towards the front of the classroom, highly aware of many students glancing at me as I do. This is exactly the kind of thing I hate. There's nothing in the whole world that I want to do more than just run out of the room, but I guess I can't. Fixing my eyes on the floor, in a desperate attempt to ignore everybody's gazes, I force myself to walk up to Matsumoto Sensei's desk. And to be honest, I'm surprised that he called on me like that in front of everyone. He's the one who let me sit behind the rest of the class and who never makes me answer a question or read a passage from a textbook. He knows what I'm like. And my anxiety has always been something that I just accepted since I came to this school. And I think as long as my work is good, they'll let it slide. And as I reach my desk, I take a lightning fast glance backward at everyone. And the noise level in the room has gone up considerably, friends starting to gather in groups, talk amongst themselves, and others are leaving the room to get lunch. It gives me the slightest bit of relief to know that I'm no longer in the center of most people's attention. Still uncomfortable. I meet Matsumoto Sensei's eyes briefly to let him know that I'm ready to listen to whatever it is that he wants me to say. Hopefully, this will be quick.
Kane, I have a proposition for you.
A highly unusual start to a conversation.
The school has been in touch with your parents. We're all a little concerned about your progress here.
My progress? Well, he can't mean my grades.
Your work is quite satisfactory. But there's been talk about your interactions with other students, or lack thereof, I should say.
His facial expressions grows a bit awkward for a second, before he regains his usual serious gaze. He probably is not used to having to talk about these kind of things. I thought that my solitary ways had been glossed over in light of my decent schoolwork, but I guess I couldn't hide my problems forever.
I understand that you've had issues. There's no point in going into them now.
I thanked him silently and said, inside my own head,
The other teachers and your parents are worried about your future, Arcane. What you'll do once you leave school. It would be very difficult for someone of your nature to succeed in life, you understand?
I know exactly what he's talking about. The thought of graduating and having to find some way of supporting myself, integrating myself in society, getting a job, it's just too much to handle. Instead of facing up to it, I simply throw myself into my present moment, living in some sort of fantasy that it'll never get to that point. And I know I'm wrong, of course, but it's all I can do to keep myself going for now. I nod tensely, and he exhales, seeming to have a lot on his mind.
A suggestion has been put forward that may help you with this. Something for you to try out.
I don't like where this is going. If my parents think that I'm enrolling into some kind of therapy group or getting doped up on anxiety medication...
You used to play piano, didn't you?
What's that got to do with anything? Yes? I mumbled the word quietly. Bemused, of all things I was expecting him to say, that wasn't one of them.
Your parents tell me you quite enjoyed it, as a younger child.
Enjoyed is probably too strong a word. I took up the instrument as something to do, since I never really had any friends to hang out with. I don't know why I chose the piano. Could have been anything, really. I had a private lesson for a while. It was a half-decent way to pass the time, although I never really put my heart and soul into it. And after a while, I just lost interest. Besides, it's kind of impossible to practice when you don't have a piano at home. I've never really thought about it since, having not played for years. It's just another part of my life that fell by the wayside, and when I decided to isolate myself from the world as much as I could, I still don't understand why this is relevant to my anxiety.
How would you like to try it again?
I glanced up at him after hearing his question, and he had an unsettling mixture of concern and optimism in his eyes as he searched my face for a reaction.
It's been suggested that you join the music club as an after-school activity.
I think it's the fear in my eyes that causes him to avert his gaze for a moment. The music club? I've never joined a school club in my life. A room full of people expecting to work together in close proximity to making something happen is the complete opposite of what I want. I want everything to stay the way it is. I want to sit in the back of class and scrape by, unnoticed by everyone else. How on earth could someone like me join a club? Matsumoto-sensei clearly notices my internal panicking, and he tries to come across more gently as he continues.
I understand this is a difficult concept for you, Arcane. The issue is that the longer you remain like this, the harder it will be to break out of it.
I know he's right. I just can't stand it.
All we'd like you to do is attend one session with the music club to start with. See how you like taking up the piano again. You never know. It might prove to be a good experience. They don't have a pianist, as far as I'm aware, and they'll probably be very pleased to have you join the group.
The disgusting-faced hermit who hasn't practiced his instrument for years and can't hold a conversation with anyone? Oh, yeah. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to have me. And with every second that passes, I plunge further and further into disbelief that this is happening. As calm as Matsumoto-sensei is, I get the feeling that I'm being told to join the music club, rather than asked, like it's not an avoidable fate.
Your name is being passed on to Kudo, the club's advisor, so he knows you'll be attending.
This fact proves my suspicion exactly.
If I were you, I'd head over there today after school. The quicker you begin, the quicker you can start making progress. I'm sure your parents will be very excited to hear how it goes.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I can't believe they volunteered me for this without asking me. And my thoughts threaten to consume me entirely. But I can feel Matsumoto sensei's eyes boring into my face, waiting for some sort of answer, and my skin starts to prickle, and my stomach jitters. I want to say no, but considering everything he said, I don't think it's possible. Squeezing my eyes shut and accepting my circumstances grudgingly, I nod my head. I'm not looking at him, but I can feel him relax.
Great news! I'll send a message to Kudo. This could be the start of something very beneficial for you.
And I hear him step aside, collecting his things together at his desk, and I take this as an indication that our conversation is over. Prizing my eyes over again, I almost hope that this has all been a bad dream, and that I'll wake up in my bed. Unfortunately, the classroom comes hazardly back into view. It's real. A little too overwhelmed, I think, properly. I coerce my legs to work again, propelling me towards the door. Let's just focus on getting to my safe spot first.
Okay.
I halt myself again at the sound of my own name being called once more, and my nerves somewhat frazzled. I don't turn around, simply waiting for him to speak again. What he says is something I can't bring myself to fathom as a possible reality.
No one's going to laugh at you.
The hours since Matsumoto Sensei's announcement have passed both agonizingly slow and far too fast, and I don't think my inner monologue has been this loud inside my own head for a long time. Part of me still doesn't want to believe the truth, but multiple times I have had to force myself to face reality. I've been put forward to try out the music club regardless of how I feel about it. And my parents put me up to this, without even saying a word, knowing how horrifying it will be for me. I really must be a disappointment. I don't blame them for wanting a normal child, someone who's outgoing and makes friends easily. It's what every other set of parents has. But they should know by now that it's never going to happen with me. This music club situation is precisely the type of thing I try to avoid. Every time I try to picture the scene, I'm terrified of what I see. A bright room, packed with friends who know each other well, all turning to face me in silent horror as I walk in, too afraid to look into anybody's eyes. And though I try to suck it up and just play the piano, I make a complete mess of it, severely out of practice. Everyone gets frustrated. And the advisor tells me I'm not good enough. And I freak out, trying to endure everybody's stares, and panic attack ensues. Total humiliation. That's what I imagine will happen. And yet I can't bring myself to run away. The expectations of my parents and the teachers keep me chained to my obligation. So I carry on, walking towards the music club room. My legs feel like they're made of lead as I force myself to take step after step. The closer I get to my destination, the further out of my comfort zone I become. And the door looms ominously in front of me. Leaning towards it, I listen to the sounds coming from within. Many voices chatter animatedly, though I can't gauge from the noise alone how big the group might be. Several instruments are strummed, plucked, blown occasionally. It sounds exactly like the kind of place I don't belong. Fear threatens to engulf me for a moment, and I close my eyes, swallowing my nerves as best as I can. Just do it, Kakeru. just get through this one meeting. That's what Matsumoto Sensei's had asked of me. Attend one session with the music club to start with. And all I have to do is fumble my way through this, however god-awful it may be, and then I can go back to Matsumoto Sensei and tell him that it's not for me, that I'll never have to see any of these people again. He can't be mad at me for trying. It's what he told me to do. Taking the deepest breath I can possibly take, I do everything in my power to steady myself before pushing the door open slowly. It's loud in here. Though most conversations continue in the wake of my arrival, a few people turn and look at me, and I automatically drop my gaze, swiveling slightly so that I almost have my back at them. I can see the club's advisor out of the corner of my eye, sitting on the side of the group. Wanting to get this whole ordeal over with, I start shuffling towards him. He stands up as soon as I begin to move, probably having noticed my clumsy entrance straight away. Kane Kakaru, was it? I nod, awkwardly, not quite able to say anything just yet. My nerves need to stop making me feel sick first. Welcome to the music club. You come to us at a good time, actually. Our last pianist dropped out a few months ago. We've been hoping to find another one, but hadn't had any luck until now. I sneak a little glimpse of him. He seems a bit more easygoing than the other teachers, not as well presented as Matsumoto Sensei. His lopsided grin almost makes me relax ever so slightly. However, I can't help but laugh internally at his enthusiasm. I'm sure he won't be as keen on me once he sees how bad I am at my instrument. He pauses for a moment, seemingly to be waiting for me to say something, but I still can't bring myself to open my mouth. I manage the occasional single word to Matsumoto Sensei, having known him for years, but Kudo Sensei is new territory. After a moment, he straightens up, apparently realizing that he's going to have to take the lead. He turns to face the other students, and for a moment I begin to dread the inevitable class introduction. Everyone will definitely be staring at me then. However, after glancing back at me briefly, he seems to decide against it, seeing how tense I am, and my whole body throbs in relief. All right, everyone, it's time to begin. He claps his hand as he speaks, and the tangle of students take notice immediately, extracting themselves from their friendship groups and taking their places. Everyone seems very obedient, or perhaps just really enjoy the music club and can't wait to get started. Well, I'm sure my presence has something to do with it. First of all, I'd like you to show your newest recruit what you're capable of. I think we'll have the Bach piece, please. And a few eyes move and land on me briefly, but overall nobody seems to question why I haven't introduced myself to the club. As they shuffle through their sheet music, I find myself praising whatever gods may or may not exist for the fact that no one has tried to talk to me. Kudo Sensei drags an extra seat over to the back of the room, gesturing for me to sit down. Thankfully, it's not too close to the group, so I'll be able to feel somewhat separated from things while I watch them. I take the seat quickly, wanting to get out of the way. After a few moments of preparation, a sudden hush falls over the room. All right, everyone. And he raises his arms in order to count everybody in a thin white conductor's baton in his right hand. And I'd been so focused on shrinking down in my chair, I hadn't even noticed him pick it up. And on his signal, the group began to play. And the noise filled the room, instantly jarring me a little, but the longer it goes on, the more I'm able to calm myself down. And with everyone focused on what they're doing, there's no opportunity for them to look at me. And the piece they're playing sounds nice, although I know basically nothing about classical music. Unfortunately, I get the feeling that it's the main focus of this club. With nobody's attention on me, I managed to peek at the other students properly, and for the first time since I entered the room. There are 15 of them in total. 2 clarinet players, 1 oboe player, 2 trumpet players, 1 trombone player, 5 violinists, 2 viol players, and 2 cello players. And I don't think a group of this size technically counts as an orchestra, but they still seem to be doing a decent job of playing the piece nonetheless. And my gaze falling to rest at my feet again, I begin to feel a terrible sense of foreboding. There's no way I can contribute to this. It's obvious that these people have been playing their instruments for quite a while and practice regularly. I actually can't remember exactly how many years it's been since I touched a piano. My eyes drift over to the back of the room, where the music club's piano sits, having been temporarily neglected. It's a huge black grand piano. It must have cost a fortune. I slip my hands into my pockets tensely, as if that will prevent me from having to attempt to play the thing, and exhaling slowly and trying to ride out the fresh wave of nerves that courses through me, I sit and listen to the rest of the group performance. And once over, Kudo-sensei praises their effort, giving me them some short snippet of feedback. He then gestures towards a couple of the taller boys in the group, asking them to help him move the piano. And as they make their way to the back of the room, I feel my stomach sink within me. Can't I just carry on watching? And I lean forward in my seat, and my hands clench inside my pockets tightly. There's nothing in the world that can convince me that whatever is about to happen will be anything short of humiliating. I can't play with these people. That alone is going to alienate me from them massively, never mind my screwed up face. And I hear the quiet squeak of the piano's wheels as it rolls across the room and into place, and the scuffle of students moving to make space for it. But I can't bring myself to look up. The sound of instruments itself rings out briefly as someone plays a chord on it, probably to make sure that it's still in tune. "All right, Akane. She's all yours." He shoots the word at me casually, trying to help me feel at ease. And my eyes are cast so far down that they're almost closed. But I can still feel the horrible prick of 16 faces all gazing at me simultaneously. Please, don't look at me. Please don't make me do this. My heart beats loudly in my head, and I struggle to swallow. My mouth suddenly as dry as a bone. Trying to find some sort of focus, I recall what I'd said to myself outside the club room's door, which had pushed me to come in here in the first place. I'm only doing this once. I don't know any of these people. It's not like I'll be stuck in class with them for the rest of our school lives. They won't be there to constantly remind me how badly I messed this up. Come on, Kakeru. Just this once. Just this once. I force my body to spring up out of my chair, and before it has a chance to do anything else, the silence is deafening, almost louder than the music they'd been playing a minute ago, and I make my way awkwardly to the piano, taking a seat on the stool in front of it. I'd expect to hear whispering, people gossiping about me, trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with me, but the room is completely void of any noise whatsoever. Unsure of whether this is a good thing or not, I do my best to settle into the seat. Now, your homeroom teacher told me that you had private lessons as a youngster. Have you played the piano at all recently? They were all waiting expectantly. I've got to make some sort of effort. No, not. My words dried up. Luckily, Kudo-sensei just starts talking again as if I'd said a full sentence. Well, that's all right. None of us were musical prodigies when we started either. A quiet laugh ripples around the group, and though the situation is still excruciating, I appreciate the slight break in the atmosphere it provides. Hey, I said more than one word this time, just about. Let me grab some sheet music. We can see how you get on with that. He half jogs over to the table at the edge of the room, which looks as though it's got several stacks of books on it. And after finding what he wants, he brings it over to me and placing it on the piano's music stand. There, I've chosen the piece they just played. And since you've already heard it once, are you familiar with sight reading? I nod. My old piano tutor always made me practice sight reading at home, so I could at least develop that skill while I was away from the piano. Great. Take a minute to look over it before we play. And he nods at the rest of the group, and they take the hint, breaking into a quiet conversation in order to give me a chance to familiarize myself with the music. And I look up at the pages in front of me. But before I can really absorb anything, Kudo-sensei moves a little closer to me, leaning down slightly. Don't worry, Akane. Everybody has a shaky start. No one's expecting a masterpiece. I glance briefly at him, and he smiles in a relaxed manner before striding towards the front room. He really does seem to be going out of his way to try and put me at ease, although I get the feeling that his casual nature is quite genuine. Pulling my focus back to the task at hand, I look over the sheet music. And thankfully, the various notes, resting and performance marks running along the staves seem to make sense. A strange nostalgia rushing back to me, although I can't say it's particularly fond. I spend a short while reading the music, mapping out the notes, and I'll need to play with my fingers. Miming the piece over the top of the keys, it's not incredibly difficult, but that doesn't mean I'll be able to play it well. And after what feels like only seconds, Kudo-sensei claps his hands again, calling the room back to attention, and a massive rush of anxiety charges through my stomach. All right, I think we're ready to start. Remember to keep firmly to tempo all the way through. We don't want to take Akane on a runaway train ride. Another laugh hits the air, louder this time, and then everyone settles down, readying their instruments. And I feel as though my nervous breaths are so loud it's going to put people off. And hovering my shaky hands over the keys, I hope for some sort of miracle to get me through this. Time seems to pause as Kudo-sensei's hands remain fixed in the air, and the baton in his grasp once more, and then he moves it fluidly, counting everyone in. Oh God, this is horrible. My eyes jerk erratically between the sheet music and my hands, trying to keep track of everything at once, and my fingers feel so wooden I can't move them properly. Exactly as I expected. And just this once, that's what I keep telling myself over and over again as I block my way through what is possibly the most awkward and unappealing piano performance of all time. Nope. It seems to go on forever, and when it finally comes to a close, my whole body crumples it in on itself, exhausted despite barely doing anything. I don't even dare to imagine what everybody is thinking. I simply sit there, eyes on my lap, bracing for impact. When Kudo-sensei speaks up again, I almost flinch. All right, well, a bit shaky, but not bad, considering you haven't played in a while. I'm sure once you start practicing again, you'll be back up to speed. That's generous. If the whole room bursts out laughing at what I just did, I wouldn't blame them. Let's give it another run through, shall we? And slow down on that ostinato, will you? He waves his hands toward the oboe, and the trombone players grinning. This isn't Flight of the Bumblebee. Several of the other students burst into loud giggles this time, and the oboe player is playfully shoved by the guy next to him. A tiny part of me wants to laugh along with them. This club is a lot more relaxed than I initially thought for. However, I'm still completely convinced that this is not the place for me. We continue to play for a while, practicing the same piece of music several times, and I'm not entirely sure whether I get any better with each run through or not, but at least I'm still breathing and conscious. And the situation hasn't exactly gotten any more comfortable, though, and in all honesty, still can't wait to get out of here. As if reading my thoughts, Kudo-sensei announces something I hadn't expected. All right, you can break now. As I thought, and as though he flicked on a switch, the noise level in the room goes up dramatically, and people begin to chatting loudly, moving their music stands and instruments into smaller groups. I'm a little confused. I thought music club went on for 2 hours, but I can't have been that long already. And thankfully, Kudo-sensei appears at my side again to inform me on what's going on. The second half of each club meeting is dedicated to free practice. You can get together with a few other people and work together, or you can just stick to yourself. It gives everyone a chance to go through their individual part and get help from others if they need it. It'll be especially beneficial to you, not having a piano at home. I nod, although I feel as though I'm an autopilot somewhat. Even if I'm by myself, I don't think I'll feel comfortable attempting to resharpen my severely dwindling piano skills in the same room as everyone else. You take your time and get to know that sheet music better. We have plenty of other pieces to play here in the club. You might as well start here. He heads back to the seat he'd been sitting in when I'd first arrived, picking up some large notebooks. I don't know about this. I take a discreet glance at the students around me. Some of them have retrieved large acoustic panels from the back of the room, heaving them in place around their little subgroups. It dulls the sound a little, enabling each group to hear themselves better, and not to bother everyone else as much. But despite this near seclusion, I still don't feel comfortable enough to practice. I have to admit, I'm still shocked that not a single one of the other club members has tried to talk to me this entire time. My own classmates that I see every day are very used to me by now, and even then, they sometimes break into whispers and glances at my expense. I'd been expecting the same treatment here, but instead, everyone just carries on with things as if I'm not in the room. Perhaps Kudo-sensei specifically instructed them all not to interact with me after hearing how bad my anxiety is from Matsumoto-sensei. It doesn't make me feel great. A little dejected, I take another quick look around to see how many sets of eyes are on me. And to my surprise and relief, the answer is 0. And standing up, my legs a little wobbly, I make my way quietly over to the chair that I'd been sitting in at the beginning of the club meeting, my bag still discarded next to it. And picking it up, I swing it over my shoulders and I cast a cursive glance at Kudo-sensei. He's deeply engrossed in whatever he's doing, twirling a pen absent-mindedly in his hand between scribbles. I should just leave. I've done what I came here to do. I tried it once, yes. I'd be ducking out early, but I still battled my way through the traumatic ordeal of forcing myself to play alongside the group. They can't ask any more of that. So I take a breath, steeling myself for potential questioning when I go to the exit room. However, as I'm standing quietly, gearing myself up, my ears pick up a new sound. Something completely separate from the noise of the club members practicing and talking. Something coming from the opposite direction. A flute. No, I didn't notice any flute players in the group before. In fact, it can't be a club member. They're all here in the room with me. So what is it? Oddly curious, and also eager to remove myself from the cacophony of noise, I begin to cautiously follow the sound. Feeling self-conscious, I eye Kudo-sensei as I move towards the other side of the room, but he still doesn't notice me, busy with his notebooks. Leaving the throng of the main room behind, I find myself edging slowly down a corridor that I hadn't realized was here before. Peering down it, I catch the sight of a door on the left-hand side. I guess that is a store cupboard? But the more I shuffle towards it, the louder the sound of the flute becomes. Has somebody left a CD playing or something? Putting my ear up to the door's cool surface, it becomes clear that the sound is definitely coming from inside it. And I feel a little nervous about entering whatever room this is. But at the same time, I already know that everybody in the club is currently in the main room, so there can't be anybody in here. It makes this strange turn of events all the more intriguing. I take hold of the door handle delicately, glancing back down the corridor for a moment in case anybody has noticed that I'm missing and has come looking for me. I'm still alone. Facing forward again, I press the handle down, pushing the door open gently. I hadn't been prepared for the sight on the other side. No. At the sight of another person, my body immediately tenses up and my eyes widening in shock. But after a moment of standing there, it appears as though the girl hasn't realized that I'm here. Her back turned to me, she continues to play, the breathy hum of the flute echoing around the room, much louder now that I'm in here with it. What is she doing here? I thought I'd met all the club members. They do everything as a group. Even I wasn't allowed to sit it out, but I'm not even an official member. What makes her different? I'm bemused and a little rattled. I think about backing out of the room slowly. If I can close the door quietly enough, she might not know that I was ever there. However, the longer I stand there awkwardly in the doorway, the more the soothing sound of her flute fills my head. It's quite nice. Despite my intent to leave, my legs won't seem to move. So against my better judgment, I hover in place. The girl looks almost serene as she plays, her lips pursed in well-practiced poise as she blows gently across the flute's mouthpiece. Perhaps it's just the piece she was playing, but I start to feel a subtle hint of something other than fear, although I can't identify it. Drinking in the peaceful scene, I shift my weight to the opposite foot, having relaxed ever so slightly. This proves to be a mistake. Nope. Crap. I leaned against the door too hard and it creaked audibly, and the girl gasps quietly as she hears the sound and her head whipping around to look at me. I automatically snap my face away, and the rest of my body freshly frozen in alarm, my heart begins to hammer within my chest. Sorry. I managed to spit the words out. There's no response. Daring myself to look back as quickly as I can, I glance at her, and her expression is panicked as she stares at me hard, seeming thoroughly disturbed, and I instantly know that it's my face she's staring at. I have to get out of here. Pulling myself together, I stagger backward into the hallway in motion, the motion of which causes the door to close loudly. Feeling ragged and a little upset, I turn to flee the scene, trying to gather myself and walk as calmly as possible. What was I thinking? The sight of that girl's terrified eyes as she looked at me stays burned in my memory. I must have repulsed her. A horrible clenching in my chest as I rejoin the main club room, peeking around the corner to see if the coast is clear and everything is exactly as I left it, and the other club members are locked in their mini practice groups, and Kudo-sensei still has his nose in his work. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is save it. Ooh, very nice. I like the save files. That is most of the first chapter, and I'll probably play this again. I love the way that this story reads. The writer is very, very talented and has captured the emotions of this young man as he is dealing with the anxiety of having a deformity. But what he's coming to find out, and you can kind of see this, is that this deformity is not as bad to everyone else as it is to him. And so this is something that a lot of kids, of course, young people, deal with as they try to find their way in society, that they look at many of their shortcomings and see that they suffer from the anxiety and the depression and everything like that. As they suffer through these things, they come to realize that they're the ones that are beating themselves up. And this seems to be going on with in Venus Improbable Dream. It's a beautifully written visual novel, and I am not even very far into it. Can't wait to read more of it, and I want to thank all of you for kind of joining me for this first portion. Let me know in the comments what you think about this and what you think about the reading of it, as well as the writing. It is very, very nice visual novel. So, God bless every single one of you, and have a fantastic day. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll be talking to you guys later.